welcome back to the workshop. Next project here, unlike the last couple, is not going to be quick and will likely take some time. Going into the Warhammer 40,000 universe and the army of the Sisters of Battle. What I'll be building is the original, well, not the original, but the current, soon to be replaced edition of the Exorcist tank. Yeah, it definitely styled like a tank with a huge pipe organ on the back. This is a picture of the model from the website. Unfortunately, the box does not have, the box is, the box doesn't have a picture of the model on it because of the edition of the kit I got. In fact, I had to pick up instructions from online. Now, here is a screenshot from Dawn of War Soulstorm depicting the color scheme I'm going to be working with, or at least using as a gauge. I have created the Order of the Blessed Flame, and we'll be working with some nice chunky Games Workshop plastic. First two sprues here and here are the standard sprues for the Rhino tank, which is a standard of Imperial forces, specifically the Sisters of Battle and the Space Marines. Here's where we start to set this apart as a Sisters of Battle edition. This is the Sisters of Battle sprue. It actually has the parts, along with some of the detail parts I'll use for the Exorcist, to turn the Rhino into an immolator tank. Now here, in all of its chunky metal goodness, is the collection of parts that truly turn this into the Exorcist. I mean, you got the keys on the keyboard. You've got some gorgeous iconography in the added plates. There's almost a pound of metal here to be added to the model. Got your organist, as well as her loader. The pipes for the organ, which I may drill out a little because, as you can see, they're kind of flat going in. But, you know, we'll play that part by ear. In the meantime, I'm going to get started. Alright, while it may not look like a whole lot has gotten done, I have gone in and trimmed off the pour stubs, and using the sanding drum and my Dremel, gone in and cleaned up a lot of the seams on all the heavily detailed metal pieces. At this point, these pieces are ready for a bath to get rid of the oily feeling on them, which will be their next stop. Okay, as you can see, I've been working on the actual tank part of this. Got the door in place. You can see the interior detail they add. You won't see this on the Exorcist because it all gets buttoned up. Now, one thing Games Workshop does with their treads to make sure things line up, of course, it's not a complete tread. What they do is they interlink several pieces to give the illusion of a true interlinked tread. These treads aren't designed to move, so that's not a big deal. slowly but slowly we'll get this all together. Okay. Basic construction of the Rhino chassis for the Exorcist is now complete. I haven't put the door in the bay, I haven't put the cupolas in or the visor on the windows because that's all going to get covered with parts for the Exorcist. But as you can see, yeah, it's a fairly stocky little tank, but it's designed as a personnel carrier more than anything else. They just gave it a nice. Well, they use it for just about everything for the Space Marines up until recently. But with that point set, it's time to get started on turning this into an Exorcist. Okay, as you can see, there's been a whole lot of metallic progress. We've got one additional plastic piece, that being the ram prow, but we've got all the metal pieces on the hull of the chassis. The massive organ that actually makes up the core of the Exorcist. Like I said, it's an organ, which means we have our organ player's seat. These are all being put together with 5-minute epoxy to give us a little more work time, as well as slightly stronger bond than I've been getting with super glue lately. Now there are some seams I'm going to want to work with. Let's move the glue out of the way. Mostly where they're visible. But this is still coming along really well. We're not too far from being ready for primer. Alright, as you can see, I've got it mostly laid out. I still don't have this top piece glued down, nor do I have the seat actually glued in place. That's mostly to make painting this thing a little easier. You can see the hints of the red Bondo, filling a couple of nastier gaps. All in all, I'm looking at this thing as being ready for primer. I mean, you can see the detail that sits in this tank. I'm looking forward to seeing it all one color. We'll see how things go. Okay, as you can see, the parts now have a nice black coat. At this point, next stop will be a coat of gold. And then I'll go for the detail painting and weathering. But it's starting to look pretty sharp. Alright, as you can see, got the coat of Tester's Inca Gold in place. Shadows are still staying out pretty well, especially on the organ itself. The keyboard station looks good too. At this point, we're ready to start playing detail paint and getting some red on here too. Alright, as you can see, we've got our base red coat down. This is just the main coat. I've still got some areas where I need to go in and do some smaller detail finish up with the red. The gunner and loader are just loosely put in place, as you can tell by the angle on the gunner. Not the gunner, but the loader. At this point, it's time to go in and do some detail painting work. I still need to paint the treads. And, you know, slowly but slowly, we're getting there. Okay, what we've got here are the two figures. The servitor slash loader, who has literally been, you know, he was human once, but has literally been reconfigured to be a loading machine. I used some pale flesh on what few areas I saw as flesh tone. And the rest of it is just Vallejo dark gray primer and a Vallejo brass dry brush. Now, for our organist, it's been a long time since I've tried to paint anything this small. As you can see here, you know, a couple of little hiccups. I may go touch up that little bit on her face. But as far as the overall look goes, we've got a base coat, again, of the Vallejo dark gray primer. The entire figure, or, you know, her entire outfit was then painted over in Vallejo brass. The red was done with the Mephiston red that I've been using on the rest of the Exorcist. Her hair is white, both to signify her age and, well, a lot of the Battle Sisters wear white hair in the bob. The details were picked out in the brass, and then a slight dry brush in the brass to bring out a little more of the detail. At this point, it's about time to sit these two into place and go for final reveal. Okay, at this point, final assembly's done. All the paint's on, figures are in place. A little bit of black washing for some detail. Not a whole lot of weathering. We're going to call the Sisters of Battle Order of the Blessed Flame Exorcist build done. As you can see, I've got the light on to help bring out some detail too. The red and gold came out really nice. My only problem with this is my fault. When I went to epoxy down the deck for the organ, I pushed it too far forward. You can tell by the gap there. Had I not done that, this gap would have disappeared. This is purely on me. But since that is not super glue, but rather 5-minute epoxy, I am not going to try to cut this off and reseat it. The figures are in. Got our servitor loading and our organist ready to bring the wrath of the Emperor down on the enemy. Got Sisters of Battle iconography all over. Purity seals everywhere they could conceivably put them. Got skulls, got fleur-de-lis markings. All in all, it's actually a really good kit. There were some fit issues with the old metal parts, but let's face it, some of those metal parts are upwards of 10 to 15 years old in the mold. I'm still very happy with how this turned out, regardless of my goof up with the turret deck. So, without much more rambling here, I'm going to call this build done and stick some stills at the end. And thank you all for watching.